What up, y'all? It is Anti-Negative back again, and we are going to be talking a little bit about Avatar today. So, I don't know if anybody's been playing on MTGA or playing at their store, playing with their friends, buying Avatar cards and having some fun, but overall, Avatar is pretty good. So, I think everybody's been kind of having fun with Avatar just in general. It's a pretty good breath of fresh air since we got a pretty dull garbage set with Spider-Man, to say it lightly. I think definitely a few like good cards from that set, but nowhere close to what is happening with Avatar right now. And it's only been a week, so there's a lot of things that are going to be changing with the set and just with the meta in general, just over the next couple months as it develops until Lorwyn. So I think there's a lot of really cool stuff to be had here, and a lot of fun stuff to brew. Overall, every single kind of call out that I think everybody, including myself, had about the set has been performing super well and has been doing really well, just in general. So, we had the Bant Airbend combo, and that one's kind of making waves. It's been doing well in leagues. It's kind of doing really good in challenges as well. So that one, much less jank than I thought it was, which is cool. So, whether or not you like combo at all, I think a lot of the people that were on some of the Kona decks or Reanimator decks, I think started to move towards that, because a lot of people started just teching in straight up Rest in Peace for those Reanimator decks, because that's kind of how you have to shut down Bringer. You can't really just ghost vacuum the problems away. But yeah, for the most part, everything's been pretty fun. Really, the only big standout card that, is posing a huge problem for the meta is Badgermole Cub. So, you have to add more layers to that card in order to really think about how to actually deal with it. I think that's really the big problem with this card. Also, it's a mythic rare 2-drop. So obviously it's going to be pushed in some way. I think it's a little too pushed, but it's a mythic, so it's hard to say. I think really the big issue with the design space there is that 2-drop mythics are kind of issues in general. And we happen to have 2 of them in this set, and they both are selling pretty well and are high priced cards. So Badgermole Cub, biggest standout of the entire set so far, and it's kind of pissing people off just a little bit, I would say. No need to panic just yet. It's not the second coming of Vivi. The biggest difference between these two is that, Vivi has enchantments, Cauldron, which is an artifact, also has the graveyard you have to worry about, and then you have to worry about the creatures. So you can't just put in board wipes and then hope for the best with Cauldron decks. So that has completely changed. We're not worried about 10 different ways this deck is trying to win. This deck is trying to win through pretty normal means. It has, if we're talking about Simic or even the Bant Airbend combos, which are both running Badgermole, by the way, you're going to see that pretty much every green deck in the meta right now is running Badgermole. So you're just having to worry about this card for now. I think it's just kind of the flavor of the month. And I think it will be until the meta kind of stabilizes to answer it more effectively. Here's the big thing about this card, though. Once we do get a good balance of how to answer this card correctly, then we will actually shut down a lot of different decks. It's not just going to be Badgermole shut down by the efficient sweepers. It's going to be pretty much every other, creature-based strategy as well. That includes sacrifice decks. It includes whatever else you can think of that has a bunch of low creatures and tries to go wide. So Badgermole Cub is not going to be, I think, the big menace forever. I really think that it's just a big 2-for-1 that, just on the surface looks like a 2-for-1 because you get a 2-mana 2/2 and a 1/1 land creature dork that can then tap for 2 mana. So it's pretty in your face with how much value it's getting. So therefore, it makes it really obvious of how powerful it is to pretty much everyone. And I think no one in their right mind can say, hey, this card's not that good, because it's really telling you how good it is. Mainly because turn 2 Badgermole is creating kind of the possibility to play 2 Badgermoles on turn 2, because it gives you 4 mana immediately. And then the next turn after, if you have 2 Badgermoles and you can't answer that board, then you have 9 mana, something closer to that. And then you can play out Ouroboros, you can play out a bunch of stuff. You can play out 2 Ouroboros if you have them in your hand. And you would probably only need about 2 lands. And so that's what makes this a bigger issue just in general. Mainly because it accelerates your mana so quickly that if you don't answer that board by turn 3, you're probably just going to lose the game. It doesn't kill you turn 3. It just makes the board state kind of insurmountable. So it's really, really tough to deal with this board. Again, Badgermole is a 2-mana 2/2, so there's a lot of things that answer it, specifically like Stab, Torch the Tower, Firebending Lesson. It can also be Seam Ripped. It can also be bounced in order to slow down the card, which, you know, based on how many Badgermoles you played, giving them another land to Earthbend, probably not great, but, you know, this is probably one of the more efficient ways to deal with it. Any 1-mana removal spell can kind of like deal with this thing. Unfortunately, we don't have Cut Down in the meta, and that would really just kind of like hinder a lot of things. It would have hindered a lot of things with even Izzet Cauldron, but Cut Down is not here, so we don't have any like super good safety net for Dimir specifically. So Dimir has been having a tough time dealing with this card, mainly because you don't have really efficient sweepers in Dimir for these type of boards. So what you're really worried about in this deck with Simic is that it can go super wide on turn 3 and put down an Ouroboros. If you don't have the answer for the Ouroboros, then, you know, you're just not going to be able to kill anything for the rest of the game, and you'll probably just lose on turn 4. So that's kind of like what the ultimate curve out of this deck is looking like, and it's also feeling like green-white cage. I said Bant Airbending as well. Anything green is going to have this card. So that means that when you figure out how to deal with one of these decks, you figure out how to deal with all of them. And I'm not saying that, you know, Pyroclasm and Fire Magic are the best answers, because it does lock you to red, but they are some of the best answers that we have for it. And red feels a bunch of different decks. It's not like you're just going to be playing mono red, or you're just going to play like Gruul, Delirium, you know, whatever deck you can think of that might play this deck or play this card, you know, can also like play these answers to itself. And Gruul Delirium is also playing Badgermole as well. So again, it's every deck that's playing green is going to play this card. It's just what happens when cards are super pushed, and we're going to have to deal with it for a while. So that means getting your answers ready and then hopefully answering this deck and a bunch of other ones at the same time. And that's why this is a lot different than the Cauldron meta, because we didn't have a sideboard that can answer every deck. We had one really problem deck that had a ton of really varied type of threats. So we end up losing to stuff like very, very low-key mono-red mid-range-ish with Screaming Nemesis, and that became a problem deck even though it wasn't even its best form over the last year. Mainly because we didn't have sweepers for it. We didn't have the right type of removal because we had too many other things to worry about. So, you know, I feel like when we do start putting in like Pyroclasm, Split Up, Star Cage, we also have 0 Point Ballad, we also have Day of the Black Sun, and then Jeskai can slow down the board by answering these Badgermoles to slow them down. And then, you know, then they have to play the slow kind of Ouroboros into possibly another removal spell into, you know, an Ultima, you know. So that's kind of the ultimate answer to the Badger boards is Ultima. So that'll work like a game 1 type situation, but game 2, Simic might have some counter spells here and there. So it's going to be a little bit harder for them to be taken down on game 2s, because they can play stuff like Spider Sense or Detect Intrusion, and then, you know, tap one of their lands, you know, web sling it back, and then play a negate for like 1 mana. So it's a little bit of an issue. I would say if the meta isn't actually diverse right now, then it would be like a huge problem. But this meta right now is super diverse. So it's hard to say what really is like the huge problem here. We have Tiger Seal and like, is it looting along with Mako, kind of like fitting in the one slot super well. So, not only that, we just have like a ton of different decks being fueled by new avatar cards that are doing super well. Not even including the like, is it Lessons deck, or, I know that there's like some other like, 4-color control with Azula, and that you can build however you want. You can even build it more of the 5-color kind of control. Jeskai Revelation copied is pretty good. So Azula with that build is actually really, really sweet. And 4-color control can actually tech in every single board wipe under the sun in order to deal with Badger boards. So it can have Fire Magic, it can have Pyroclasm, it can have Starcage. You name it. You name the type of answer that you need for the meta, 4-color control can do it. It just really depends on like, is the ladder doing this today or not? And can 4-color control get through other kind of like controlling matchups, mid-range matchups? And so that's really going to be the thing that we have to figure out. I think we already kind of have, hence me talking about it here. I'm not like some kind of like super meta genius here over here. Like these are pretty obvious answers to this type of board. What we have to start doing is like just teching them in, and then this is not just going to answer that Badgermole board. It's going to answer a lot more. And I'm just going to keep reiterating that, because once we do this, things will kind of even out. Win rates will kind of like even out as well. And the big issue with like people calling for bans on this kind of stuff is like, you can't just say I want to ban things because they're strong, even though Badgermole is like obscenely pushed. You do also have to look at win rates and diversity of the meta as well. What happened with Cauldron when it became really good is everyone was having to play it because it was really hard to play against it. And then once you figured out mono red, then everybody started playing that in order to like not have to spend $800-$900. And then they, did away with both of those. So now we have this meta where, the last couple challenges have been completely diverse, where we see the top 16, the top 20, just kind of all different decks. And that's kind of crazy right now. It's still really early, so we're going to see it settle into other things as well as just a lot of repeats, because people will start to like choose the deck they want to play. And that doesn't mean that one deck is like clearly the best yet, until we see like what has happened over the last couple of years with Standard in general. I would say almost 2 years now, but over the last 6 months specifically, we've had a lot of these very mono focused challenges and just tournaments in general. Everyone's playing one deck, not just, like, oh, we can play the thing that beats it, because it ended up being, Is It Cauldron was so varied that you couldn't beat it. And yeah, that's just kind of like where we're at with it. If we see that Badgermole is like completely warping the meta to just play Badgermole or lose because there's no way to answer a Badgermole board, which is completely untrue. There are ways to answer it. We do have to draw them. We do have to put them in. We can't just try to only have Stab and Torch to Tower and Seam Rip and be like, well, I have my 1-mana removal spell. Like, I still can't answer the Badgermole board. It's like, well, that's not enough, because Badgermole is a 2-for-1. So we have to be able to answer 2 things for 1 card. And if we can Pyroclasm their board, great, because then we can wipe out a bunch of stuff. And that makes them have to rebuild the board. That makes them have to slow down exponentially. We shouldn't be seeing these boards on turn 3 just have 50,000 permanents in play. That means that probably the person playing that against that Badgermole deck wasn't prepared for it, and they didn't draw their sideboard card. We should be mulling for these things. We should have probably more than 2 ways to answer these types of boards, because there's a lot of these types of decks. It's not just one Simic aggro deck that's doing this type of like spam out your entire hand. There's green white, there's Bant, there's Gruul. There's even Dimir. Like Dimir does not like Dimir midrange does not like Fire Magic. And so Fire Magic keeps that deck down. It also keeps down the Orzhov bounce decks. Like these answers for those decks, they answer a lot of things. And that's kind of like the whole takeaway here. It's like you could actually even play Grixis in this meta. And Grixis mid-range kind of control cell Kefka build and have Pyroclasm and Fire Magic in main and probably do somewhat decent. I haven't been playing that much right now because I've been trying out a bunch of other stuff because I've been, brewing that deck since Final Fantasy came out. So, I just know that those things can fit in there. I also have my 0-point ballads unlocked. So, anything that can answer these decks for 2 to 3 mana is kind of like where you want to be with it. And I think that's the big takeaway. And if you have any more thoughts, questions, concerns about Badgermole, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to hear how you tech against it. Or if you think it just should be banned. Like, if you feel like you don't want to deal with this and you feel like Wizards is just power creeping too much, I agree with you. I really think that these kind of cards shouldn't be like how green is becoming relevant, because then you get these kind of like, one-up power creep metas where now we need something stronger than Badgermole in the next set in order to kind of balance out the meta again. So we'll see if Badgermole like really does that, or can we actually play against it with the tools that we have now? I think that's the biggest takeaway of it. I don't agree with it being this pushed, but I also see that it can be answered. And so we have to just think about how we can answer it and, not really stress too hard about it, because it is a game at the end of the day. It's not life or death situation here. All right. So now to the next topic of today. So like what's going on with the collector boxes, because those have been plummeting in price over the last like week or so before the release. And now the release happened. They started selling a little bit more. They kind of bounced back up to 450 and then they fell right back down again. So I think if you're trying to buy collector product at all and you just want to buy it for yourself, buy it for a friend, buy it for Christmas, I don't know. If you like Avatar, this would be the time to buy it. If you're a collector, LGS, someone looking to invest into Avatar, probably not the best bet, mainly because people aren't pulling that much per box. So if your goal is to like buy these for lower prices to flip them, if you can pull one of the Neon Ink Showcase kind of borderless arts, sure, yeah, those are selling for like $800, $900, even peaking at like $1,100, $1,200. But for the most part, they're not selling super well. So, it's kind of it's a big crapshoot in terms of like what these collector boxes are flipping around for, mainly because of the low quality of the bonus sheet, which do kind of flood out these collector packs more so than a play booster. So play booster wise, we have Badgermoles and Wan Chi Tong and a few other cards that are pretty expensive, $20 up. Badgermole is sitting pretty at $60. Wan Chi Tong is like kind of bouncing between $30 to $40, kind of peaked around $60 to $80. And then all the collector versions of those cards are around $90 to $100. So, you can get super lucky on these boxes and then kind of double your money, but I don't think it's like a super good investment if you're looking to invest into these cards, nor do I think it's like wise to do that with Magic in general. Especially right now, since we are seeing the Universe Beyond bubble kind of burst here, specifically with Spider-Man. Nobody really wants these Avatar collectors either. So, that's good for you if you really want to get some collector product for Avatar. Bad for people that are trying to scalp or, flip boxes and flip cards like that. But I don't think I care about those people so much, because that's kind of what's wrong with TCGs in general. So if they're losing money, that's a win for us, I guess. But it does mean that there's going to be less product floating around in general. So the prices of cards will generally go up. And yeah, so again, if you want those collector boxes, now's the time to strike, because they are less than MSRP, which is already very high at 455. So yeah, if you see them around 400, I saw one at 399, seeing them generally around 420, 430, even like 415, right now, up until Black Friday is going to be like a crazy time to go and buy these. So I'm sure by the end of the weekend, they'll bounce back again, maybe even be closer to 500 again. But yeah, downward trend all the way up until the set release of Avatar. It wasn't like, you know, we saw a huge spike in prices. We saw it actually just start at 600 maybe 2 weeks before Avatar release, and then just go down $20 per day until release. And around release, it was like 480, 450, and then just kind of plummeted down to like 420. Blaze it. But yeah, so anyways, that's kind of my rant for today. And hope you guys have a good week. Cool Thanksgiving. Have fun on Black Friday. I will not be partaking in a lot of that stuff other than some good food. But I will see you guys soon, and I'll be posting some brew videos pretty soon here, so keep an eye out for those. And yeah, expect more content soon. Later.